Hey all, it's Wednesday, and we're gonna talk video games for the next little while on Wednesdays. Because I've told a few people that I've been working on this. I think I talked about it in a video as well. But I've been doing a deep dive into the Legend of Zelda game series because I am sick of people calling Princess Zelda a damsel in distress. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest failings of analysis in video games, both on specific and then greater cultural grounds, but it's just accepted as true because of an appeal to authority and appeal to popularity. And yeah, I started working this before feminist frequency folded, but I think now is the time to start undoing some of the damage here. Because why I say it's an appeal to popularity and an appeal to authority is feminist frequency is a feminist. They say Zelda is a damsel in distress. See, they are right. That's a fallacy. Just because somebody calls themselves a feminist authority does not mean they're right on an original point. But the appeal to popularity grew because it just became a thing. Yes, Princess Zelda is a damsel in distress. They lump her in with Princess Peach. Princess, Nintendo must be the same, right? Wrong. Wrong. So this is going to take weeks to unpack. I'm just going to focus on the first two games right now. Now, this is not something I do regularly now. And I used to do fully post-produced videos and this stuff. I don't have the time, and I don't think it's necessary in this way. I think that just the information alone, I'm doing captures for Tears of the Kingdom, but there's enough information here that, we can just crack at this. We don't need visual aids. If you like this, help support this channel. This is what Patreon support goes towards. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or there's the one-time Leanna Care session for somebody who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK, my peer counseling stuff. Artist management, writing management. If you want help with a story, this is one of the things I do. And then there's the GoFundMe for the Men's Network, where we can talk about stuff like this. Because one of the things men needs guidance with is figuring out this stuff so they don't get in trouble and just have to take it. All right, so let's dive in, okay? Let's start by defining damsel in distress, right? A damsel in distress, in the simplest terms, is a young woman in trouble. Damsel, young unmarried woman in trouble, distress, right? The young unmarried woman is very important. That is what a damsel means. Now, the implication in the damsel in distress trope is that the woman needs to be rescued. i.e. a prince in a fairy tale, right? TV tropes puts more detail into the trope. A female character is put into immediate danger in order to put the cast in motion. I emphasize that because in order to put the cast in motion, her plight unites the cast, causing them to put aside their differences and work together to save her or provide the premise for the quest, and is considered older than dirt. The nature of the distress varies. The classic damsel has been kidnapped or captured and is locked away, awaiting rescue and afraid for her life and virtue. Verbal underline there as well. She may also be lost or stranded in a hostile area, trapped or suffering any number of terrible fates where she needs help to survive. In other cases, the damsel in distress is due to someone in her own family, such as her husband, arch nemesis dad, wicked stepmother. If the abuser is her husband, she may be rescued by a wife basher. TV tropes never disappoints in terms of clever names for these tropes. Okay, so what does this mean? Okay, the damsel in distress is a diagnosis of exclusion in tropeland. Okay, what that means, it assumes that the damsel is just a young woman. The things of importance are her life, her virginity, and her bloodline. The parentage, the father of her children. It has nothing to do with information she possesses or power she wields, special abilities, skills, stuff like that. The minute she's captured for information or unique power she wields beyond her status or just being a woman and virginity, oh God, she'll be ruined if she's raped, right? The minute it's about information or power outside her status, it's a trope that could just as easily apply to a man. You don't kidnap a president because of their gender or because you can violate their virtue. You kidnap a president or a CEO or, anyone else because of they are an individual that has access to information or power. Different trope, right? And the type of tropes we're talking about here are all over the place. They include the hostage MacGuffin. That is like the president's daughter thing. The specifics of the hostage MacGuffin, again, why it doesn't apply to Princess Zelda is they're not kidnapped or held for ransom because of who they are or what they can do, but who they're connected to. And often even the good guys only want to rescue them because of what they represent, not because they have inherent virtue as an innocent young woman, right? Then there's the political hostage, which is something different. You get into the scientist that is, captured and forced to work. That doesn't really approach Princess Zelda either. You've got the idea of a coup, the seizure of power. That definitely leans more into Zelda, but there's more there. Again, you can only have a damsel in distress trope with a female character if nothing else makes the character important, right? Princesses, hold up. Why does this matter? Why does this matter? Because if the character in question is captured, kidnapped, restrained, held ransom, if it's about information or power other than the family lineage thing, that patrilineal descent structure, it's a trope that could just as easily apply to a man. And that means reducing that female character just to her gender is sexist. Now, why? Because it's applying gender to make the characters seem bad or less where that gender is not truly relevant. Now, getting onto princesses, I almost jumped the gun there. Princesses are a favorite damsel in distress because princesses are connected to power and can get a villain, to put it very coarsely, into a royal bloodline via rape. But the important thing to keep in mind is that a princess in this tradition is nothing special in and of herself. She couldn't possibly have started shit. She couldn't possibly have started a war on her own. She is not an enemy combatant, right? It's her ties to her father and the ability to produce heirs to get men into this structure that's really important. Or she's cute and nice and innocent and couldn't possibly have done anything wrong or offensive or cunning or scheming. As soon as that damsel does something active, it's not a damsel in distress trope, not purely a damsel in distress trope. And it is wrong to minimize or reduce the character just to a mere damsel in distress. Diagnosis of exclusion. Here's a big example from Western media. Princess Leia. A lot of people go, oh yeah, damsel in distress because she said, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. But Leia is not generally seen as helpless. She's the leader of the fucking rebellion. Not damsel in distress. Political intrigue, right? Now, Star Wars is inspired by Japanese media. It's not an accident that Princess Leia had that kind of combo going on. She's the princess. She's also a rebel leader. Stop, you're both right, right? This is not an accident. Because Japanese media, and Star Wars was inspired by a bunch of Japanese films, notably the works of Kurosawa. Japanese history is very unique. And Japanese media has a very different association with the idea of a besieged noblewoman. Because Japanese history has something called the Warring States period, which is sort of feudal medieval similarities. It ran from 1467 to 1568, Common Era-ish. Common Era, for people who use old terminology, means AD. It was a period of war. It was a period of warring factions. Raiding and pillaging were common. And noble women, the princess, were often left in charge of guarding their households while the men were warring. So when you see medievalist tropes with a princess in a castle or a princess holding off a bad guy, this carries a very different charge than the Western damsel in distress trope. A captured and besieged noblewoman is presumed to be a defender or undermining the villain with her wits, not a helpless victim. Now, part of this is because capturing and impregnating a noblewoman during this period of Japanese history didn't work the same way, since ritual suicide was expected to prevent exactly this. The Japanese do not have the same historical association with suicide being a sin. You know, in Christianity, you die by suicide, you're going to hell, right? Eternal damnation, you don't do it. We all know about seppuku for men, right? There was a version for women as well that involved the throat instead of the guts. It was expected that you not produce heirs from your enemy. The whole trope falls apart. But it's deeper than this. We have to talk about the Japanese philosophy of the self and how it differs from the West. Why the damsel in distress trope does not apply neatly to Japanese fiction. Quote from a Science Direct article. For many North Americans, the self is represented as independent from other people, autonomous, bounded, and composed of a relatively stable collection of attributes, abilities, wishes, and goals that transcend social contexts and highlight the person's uniqueness. So you have a lone hero in American media. They are assumed to be an individual acting based on their own will and agency. It's different in Japan. Now, this is not across the board, obviously. This is a tradition. But it's important to see the difference for context. In many Japanese contexts, the self is represented as situational, context-dependent, and interdependent with others, defined by one's relationships, group memberships, and social contexts. So the idea of the damsel in distress shifts there. The concept of a hero shifts there because it's not, he's powerful, she's not. It's, they all have a part to play. And this is why you can't neatly apply the Western damsel in distress trope to Japanese media. But even if we did, still wrong, okay? Let's look at the actual plot of the original Legend of Zelda, the first game from back in the day, all right? Reading mostly taken from Wikipedia. In an attempt to prevent Ganon, the Prince of Darkness, from acquiring the Triforce of Wisdom, Princess Zelda splits it into 8 fragments and hides them in secret underground dungeons. Before eventually being kidnapped by Ganon, she commands her nursemaid Impa to find someone courageous enough to save the kingdom. Now, she's kidnapped. She's a damsel in distress. Remember, diagnosis of exclusion and must only matter if it's female, right? If you gender swap that passage, nothing changes. Behold, In an attempt to prevent Ganon, the Prince of Darkness, from acquiring the Triforce of Wisdom, Prince Zelda splits it into 8 fragments and hides them in secret underground dungeons. Before eventually being kidnapped by Ganon, he commands his advisor Impo to find someone courageous enough to save the kingdom. Does that sound helpless when it's a man? No, it sounds like the man with the plan. He's 2 steps ahead. And that's the point. 1, okay? The goal here is to save the kingdom. Existential threat here. The kingdom by collecting an item, not her. The actual device putting the plot in motion is not the kidnapping of the princess. Remember that TV tropes definition. The device putting the plot in motion is the existential threat to the kingdom that Ganon represents. Collecting and reassembling the Triforce of Wisdom is the objective, not primarily rescuing the princess. Zelda herself is not the prize that Link and Ganon are competing to possess. Zelda herself broke down and hid the pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom. Ganon takes her prisoner not to threaten her virtue, but to obtain critical information from her so he can seize power. This is not the traditional structure of the damsel in distress trope. Beyond that, Zelda is clearly an active participant behind the scenes, which in and of itself doesn't remove the damsel in distress label. And this is where we get into a problem. It doesn't remove the damsel in distress label, even though a man doing the exact same actions would be considered a badass in distress, which clearly has different connotations. The badass in distress trope is designed to stop a character who is powerful from seeming too powerful. It takes them down a peg, allegedly to make a more interesting character. But whenever a woman is put in the exact same position, oh, she's a damsel in distress, this is immediately bad for all women everywhere. This is an issue. Again, you can't treat women as a completely different thing than men in the exact same position to make them bad or less. That's sexist, all right? Here's the thing that does remove the damsel in distress label, even if we apply the Western framing. It's a bit of a challenge with The Legend of Zelda because it's the Japanese using Western aesthetics to tell a story. Now, both Mario and Zelda are tricky this way because, yes, blonde princess in the case of Princess Peach, Zelda is, her hair color changes depending on the Zelda. But there are little Japanese hints all through. I mean, the Shy Guys in Mario are definitely a Japanese aesthetic trope. But in Zelda, there are ninjas, right? There are ninjas all through it. The Sheikah tribe, the Yiga clan. There is definitely a more overt Japanese flavor to the Legend of Zelda franchise as a whole. But that's sort of come up as it's evolved right from the beginning. The entire plan to defeat Ganon was Princess Zelda's idea. That's why the name is The Legend of Zelda, not The Legend of Link. She came up with the whole thing. She came up with the whole master plan to break down the Triforce of Wisdom, spread it into parts, get kidnapped as a distraction, so Impa can go out and recruit someone to reassemble it for her, bring it back, defeat Ganon together, good guys win. And that's significant because with Japanese idea of self, but even if you go with just, oh, master plan, she's never actually in peril. Ganon is not going to get rid of her until he gets the Triforce. She's the only one who knows where it is. So she's fairly safe. She's got a plan. She's 2 steps ahead of Ganon the whole time. Now, in Japanese tradition, Link's role in the whole thing is absolutely interdependent with Zelda's plan. Even if you apply chivalric code to it, Zelda is calling the shots. Link is not a lone hero that saves the day. Link is a Link. He's a young man doing his duty. And this is where you can tell I get pissed. The reduction of Princess Zelda to a mere damsel in distress is just lazy. It's because people don't factor in what's going on off screen. You know, there's no, it was Agatha all along. Wink, right? And so people miss it. But that's where the Japanese versus the Western traditions come into play, because Japanese audience is going, well, you know, of course she's cunning. Of course she's using subterfuge. Of course she's commanding people to do things to save her kingdom. That's what a princess in a tower does. You know, in Japanese tradition, it's all over stuff. Japanese heroines are seen to be competent, even if they're not full-on combatants. You know, they're not, help, I am captured again. Yes, Princess Sparkle Muffin. They're, no, it's on, mofo. Completely different. And once you break it down that way, it's beyond clear. Now, Zelda 2 muddies the waters some. Zelda 2 is the closest game to additional damsel in distress, but still a twist. I'm not going to leave you hanging. And this is the last game we're going to cover today because time. If I rip the Band-Aid off more, we'll do it in chunks going forward, okay? Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Different Zelda from a distant past. Now, this Zelda's brother tried to force her into telling their recently dead father's secrets concerning a new Triforce. Okay. Princess Zelda refused to reveal its location. And the princess, they describe him as a wizard friend, which is an interesting coding. But the wizard, in anger, tries to strike Zelda down with a spell. Strike me down and you will become more powerful than ever. Yeah, that's a Japanese thing, right? But it failed. She fell under a sleeping spell, the Sleeping Beauty thing, which is why people think it's straight up damsel in distress. Okay. The wizard was killed by his own spell. Zelda survived. Baller move. Okay. And the prince, her brother, couldn't reverse the spell. So remorseful, he had his sister placed in the castle tower, hoping she'd be awakened one day. It's a twist on the Sleeping Beauty trope, which is why people miss the fact that it is still a battle of information, not Zelda's virtue or physical well-being. They were going to kill her. They cared about the information, not her. The actual device driving the action, remember, TV Trope says it has to drive the action. The actual device driving the action and creating the conflict between Link and the followers of Ganon is actually not the princess. It's, one, the information she possessed that leads to the Triforce of Courage. Triforce, there were only 2 in the first game. Triforce of Courage is depicted as Link's birthright. He has a mark on his hand. Now, the Triforce of Courage will also break the spell, keeping Zelda in a coma. But that's not why Ganon's followers, Ganon's presumed dead. Here, Ganon's followers are trying to kill Link to resurrect Ganon. It has nothing to do with get the princess. Now, yes, the Japanese were toying with the Sleeping Beauty myth. Nintendo was toying with the Sleeping Beauty myth here, but putting a different twist on it. And yes, this game is called Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, so Zelda's role is reduced. But again, yes, we have a Sleeping Beauty analogy, but slumbering mystics are not exclusively female. We have parts of the Arthurian myth where Merlin's trapped in a tree. For instance, Zelda's plight is once again due to her protecting a greater power, not some inherent value in feminine virtue. When it comes right down to it, it's once again about the location of the Triforce of Courage. Greater thing, protecting the kingdom, keeping power in the right hands. So even though Zelda 2 is probably the closest to a straight up damsel in distress in the whole franchise, it still ain't that simple. It ain't. Because again, it's not just, oh, capture the princess because, and yeah, the whole capture the princess thing is older than dirt. But people understood it. We should be giving Nintendo credit for, even back in these early days, making Zelda more than just a woman who is rescued because she's a woman and she's pretty, and the implication is that the hero wants to sex her, right? It ain't that. It's never been that. And that's important. And it's so important that I'm going to keep working through this series in future videos to show you just how off the interpretation of Zelda as damsel in distress is. We've established it from the beginning. There was clearly attempts to step away from that raw trope, to make it more of the Japanese defender intention than the helpless victim who needs rescuing because she sucks thing that the trope has come to mean in feminist analysis. And then we'll eventually talk about why I think that's not entirely right. An overused trope does not immediately mean that it is inherently bad against or versus women. I talked about this in Lady Bits, but I want to talk more eventually about why I think we really need to rethink that. But for now, I will leave you to mull this over part one. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. If you like this, kick me a few bucks on Patreon, patreon.com/LeannaK. Or if you don't want to do the monthly thing, coffee.com/LeannaK. Help buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Or kick me a few bucks to our men's network stuff so we can have discussions like this, help men understand what's going on with them, what's going on with the world, what's going on with all these assumptions about things, so that people can feel more confident, centered, and generally have less anxiety and stress. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. See you next time.